just realized I forgot to put my mic on. That's that look on my face. It's like, I probably have to, oh, there it is on. Woohoo! So welcome. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. It's so good to see everyone. Please know that whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. This is such a beautiful faith community, and you are welcome. Just a few short announcements because we have a wonderful mission moment this morning. Choir practice has begun. We're so glad to have the choir back. They get to sing for us this morning. It's so wonderful to see them. Yay! I miss the choir. Our office administrator, bookkeeper Aria, is asking for you to send in any new information for the church directory. Like if your address has changed, your email, phone number, or any information. If you're not in the directory and you'd like to be, just send it in to Aria at the office@ucup.org, and she'll make sure you get in there. Pumpkin carving's coming up. It's that time, first day of fall. So it's pumpkin carving time. So October 27th, it's a ways away, but 4:30 to 6:30, it's on is that a Saturday? Oh, it's a Sunday. So bring your tools, unearth them. And the planning retreat, please make sure you get that planning retreat on your calendar. It's November 16th. November 16th. It's a Saturday. Wasn't yesterday. It's coming up in November. Uh-oh, I see Janet. We are either going to do it at Mason United Methodist or Mount Cross Lutheran. It hasn't, the pastor it was going to be at Mason, but the pastor had to take a 3-month leave. And so I kind of need to reconnect because we changed our date and everything. And so, she left during that change that we made. And so, so we need to reconnect. But we'll know in another week or two. And so you'll have that. It's 2 months. So we're okay. It's 2 months away. So we're doing okay. So there you go. There's some information on the back about other ministry opportunities, some retreats coming up, leadership summit. So if you're interested and you want to get involved in that, there's always opportunities to get involved. So now, kind of along with our theme for today, we have a wonderful mission moment, and this is a group from the United Church of Christ in the Pacific Northwest, meaning Oregon and Washington and Idaho, who went on, well, it wasn't really a mission trip. It was a listening tour, and they went down to the border. And one of the people who went on that trip is going to share with us this morning about her experience of listening.
We've got a video. Yeah, she wants a video. Yes. Sorry.
What happens when I'm looking at the video? Now we'll get to hear from Reverend Karen Fraser.
It's good to see everybody today, and a privilege to be invited in this gathering, but also to have been invited by Reverend Tyler and Reverend Al.
Now we'll get to hear from Reverend Karen Fraser.
It's good to see everybody today and a privilege to be invited in this gathering, but also to have been invited by Reverend Tyler and Reverend Ali.
Now we'll get to hear from Reverend Karen Fraser.
It's good to see everybody today and a privilege to be invited in this gathering, but also to have been invited by Reverend Tyler and Reverend Ali to go on this journey. I am the associate pastor at Fulmary Church, United Church of Christ in West Seattle. We are an immigrant welcoming church with a small task force with
Now we'll get to hear from Reverend Karen Fraser.
It's good to see everybody today and a privilege to be invited in this gathering, but also to have been invited by Reverend Tyler and Reverend Ali to go on this journey. I am the associate pastor at Fulmary Church, United Church of Christ in West Seattle. We are an immigrant welcoming church with a small task force with huge heart. And we came under that umbrella of immigrant welcoming, even though we were that in the way we defined ourselves, we lived into that the last couple of years as we walked with 3 families who were on an asylum journey up here that happened to walk into one of our sister churches one day in the middle of their prayer time, asking if there was a way for them to get some food and some shelter. Some resources for their a little baby that they had because their sponsorship had fallen through. And that sister church reached out to us and said, what love can we provide together? And along that way, we learned our way into being an immigrant welcoming church. And along that way, the stories of these three families and the journey, the part of the journey that we have walked with them has changed this congregation. It has opened our hearts. It has opened our eyes to how challenging and occasionally inhumane the system can be. That is without othering other people within that system, but the way it has been built. I think the whole time we were down in Brownsville, the refrain from our group was, we say the system is broken, but what we kept saying back to that is actually in some ways it's working exactly as it seems to have been built to work and needs to be torn down to the ground and rebuilt with some humanity. So I, because of my experience here with those families, when Tyler reached out and when Ali reached out with this invitation, my heart and my voice said, yes, 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 as quickly as possible. This is where I want to be. I'd heard the stories of these families, but to put yourself in place is a whole other experience. So I told my congregation just the other day, my bags, I unpack those very quickly, but my heart, I am still working on that. It is going to take me some time to unpack my heart, to find some words to share the story. But my experience in getting back in the middle of the night, the other night, was to hop into a taxi and to have a taxi driver ask me, where have you been? What have you been doing? And I was down at the border, and then there was just this flow of conversation all the way as he dropped me off, asking me, what is it like for people to come across? Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Till I got out of the cab and he said, God bless you on the journey you've been on, and thank you for sharing with me. What should I do? I said, the next person who gets into your cab, you treat them with compassion and kindness, and I will do that with the next person I see. We'll start there, and then we'll figure the rest out together. So I think what I have brought back from this trip is tremendous gratitude to Reverend Ali for the way she started this trip. It started with an email that said, this is not a mission trip. This is a trip of listening and witness, to really be fully present. Let people, whoever they were, tell their stories, and to be engaged and to sit down beside people and to hear them and to ask questions from a place of curiosity and wonder about who people were. And then to get there and be in place there in Brownsville and on the other side of the border, and to have what we know complicated by stories that rub up against each other. The first story we heard, which was really a practice narrative, but still the story we heard came from the Border Patrol. Sergeant Rodriguez, who stood there and told us his perspective on how things are. And it started up here at this sort of official level with graphs and charts. But I think our willingness to hold back and not even other, Sergeant Rodriguez and the work that he was doing, even though we could feel where maybe stories didn't feel quite true to us, but to let him just be open and share and be present, all of a sudden took him from here to let us know how he has come to be in this space and what has created this narrative, whether we agree with it or not. To learn from him, he began as a 17-year-old in this process. Because that's where opportunity was. Employment is a hope for a lifetime pension. If you work there till you're 50 years old, you didn't need a college degree. Lots of those kinds of things. But more than that, to start that journey at 17 of being shaped by a narrative that is about patriotism and about protecting America and feeling truly America in that narrative that he is telling, to present this narrative that is about this collective threat that is right up against our border, to use statements that tell us that everyone crossing is illegal, or somehow the cartel is right up against the gate, or that there is a concern for trafficking. And there is a true thread woven through that, but there is this hypervigilance in the way that it is told and the way he has absorbed that, this hypervigilance of violence and his feeling of his purpose and role in protecting those on this side of the gate. And I, just as an example, then we go across the border and we meet Lulu Gonzalez of Casa Lulu, and listen to her story. And she started when she was 16 years old. So in that same sort of formative period of her life, crossing over the border and helping the people who are unsheltered on the border, crossing over with her father and helping in that, at that time of life of crossing back and forth and bringing whatever kind of compassionate support she could find to those who are most vulnerable, until it reached this point of truly focusing all of her heart on the ministry of those who are migrants on the other side. And from that, you hear her talk about people not as illegal and cartel and at this level, but you hear her talk about people by name and the country they've come from and the story that they've carried with her. She knows them all in that context. The children of God, another human being, a neighbor, somebody who is person to person. She has broken down that kind of border that maybe Sergeant Rodriguez has put around his heart and come down to that personal level of who she is helping. And from that, she has created a safe place of hope and healing for people who have come through hopeless situations with people who have experienced torture or have survived these long journeys, or who are sick, or who are waiting patiently and uncertain about when they will be called to try to legally cross the border. In a place where, because we have put up that border fencing that Reverend Ali talked about, we have created a space of exploitation, because we have forced people who are so vulnerable to stay in a space where, this liminal space where there is safety on one side, and we have pushed up and created by our system a place of feeling unsafe on the other. But you meet Pastor Lulu you meet Lulu on the other side, and you just feel her heart for this work. You realize that there's nothing else she can do. This is a lived, fierce, embodied love that she has. And from there, we go to Casa del Migrante and meet four nuns about 75 years of age, who are just as fierce, Sister Maria, Sister Edith, just as fiercely setting up their next place of compassion that is an antidote and a healing place and a place of safety. And then we go from there to La Pasada on the other side of the border, where we meet two more women, Sister Therese and Sister Nora, who are setting up another holding space of hospitality in this journey that is so challenging and so difficult. And then Team Brownsville, who are getting people tickets and something to eat before they get on buses, and a last friendly face and a last friendly blessing before they move on. All these spaces along the way in an inhospitable system that allows people to have this deep drink of hope that will keep them going, because the other thing that we witnessed is there's no going back. The going back is not a question. The going back, there is this hope to move forward, because what's behind them has been so difficult. So my takeaway is their stories and the complexity that Reverend Ali invited us to experience, so that we even take down the walls of this is good and this is right and this is wrong and this is legal and this is whatever, to just see that there are people in the system and all are affected in some way. And what is the next step that we need to take? And my takeaway coming home is that there are people across the border like Lulu and Sister Maria and Sister Edith who are risking their own welfare and dedicating their lives and limited resources wherever they can find them to create healing, community, love, respect in the midst of all this. And the least we can do, and our greatest responsibility, is to remember that when they show up on our doorstep at our places, how are we going to become the receiver, the next receiver in that chain of compassion, of hope and restoration as they continue along this asylum-seeking journey that doesn't end in Brownsville, but comes all the way up to Seattle. And the hope is that there will be home eventually along this way. So I'm feeling that responsibility. That's what I came back with. We are a part of building those spaces of reception and hospitality and love that Lulu started on the other side. And that's what I'm feeling dedicated to going forward. So that's my story for now.
Isn't that lovely? So please join me by standing in spirit or in actual presence of standing and join with me for the call to worship. Loving God, make yourself known among us. We lift our voices in song, our hearts in prayer, our minds in consideration, our lives in adoration toward you. We acknowledge that your Spirit leads, comforts, and challenges us as we follow you. Amen. And if you would turn to your hymnal, number 73, and before we start Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, may I just say a welcome back to Roger. Hip, hip, hooray.
Thank you.
Please.
And to rejoice and come in.
You're welcome to be seated. Today's gospel reading is from Mark chapter 9, verses 30 through 37. Jesus is mentoring or disciplining his disciples as they do ministry together. I will read this passage through twice. The first time, listen deeply and take note of what stands out to you as you listen. Here are the words of our gospel. Leaving there, they went through Galilee. He didn't want anyone to know their whereabouts, for he wanted to teach his disciples. He told them, "The Son of God is about to be betrayed to some people who want nothing to do with God. They will murder him. 3 days after his murder, he will rise alive." They did not know what he was talking about, but they were afraid to ask about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was safe at home, he asked them, "What were you discussing on the road?" The silence was deafening. They had been arguing with one another over who among them was greatest. He sat down and summoned the 12. "So you want first place? Then take the last place. Be the servant of all." He put a child in the middle of the room. Then, cradling the little one in his arms, he said, "Whoever embraces one of these children as I do embraces me, and far more than me, God who sent me." Now I will read this again a little slower. Listen deeply again, please. See if the same thing stands out to you. Then at the end of the reading, pause and ask yourself why this part of the reading connected with you. Is something different the second line connects with you? Ponder these words. So again, hear the words of our gospel. Leaving there, they went through Galilee. He didn't want anyone to know their whereabouts, for he wanted to teach the disciples. He told them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed to some people who want nothing to do with God. They will murder him. 3 days after his murder, he will arise, alive." They didn't know what he was talking about, but were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was safe at home, he asked them, "What were you discussing on the road?" The silence was deafening. They had been arguing with one another, among them who was the greatest. He sat down and summoned the 12. "So you want first place? Then take the last place. Be the servant of all." He put a child in the middle of the room. Then, cradling the little one in his arms, he said, "Whoever embraces one of these children as I do embraces me, and far more than me, God who sent me." This ends our reading for today.
We'll practice with that sound before we do another mission moment so we can all hear better. Oh my computer went to sleep. See, that's not a good thing. I know. Oh my goodness. Where did my sermon go? Well, okay. It's telling my computer shut down and wants to know if I want to report this error that is happening. I'm like, well, there is an error happening, and I'm not sure why it's not opening up. Oh, there it goes. It was just delayed. Oh, okay, good. It's just delayed. Well. So, for a moment, we're going to enter a world into where Jesus is a teacher or a rabbi. Just imagine. And Jesus is mentoring or discipling his disciples as they do ministry together. There are two disciples walking along the road, and they're arguing with each other about which one of them is the greatest. I've taken some liberties here just to imagine what the disciples were saying. One of the disciples feels very strongly that they should be the lead disciple because they have the answers to how to run the empire so it can be profitable, stable, strong, a force to be reckoned with military might. The widows and the orphans have become so out of their own poor decisions, and they need to find a way to pull themselves up and find a way to supply their own food, shelter, and care for each other when someone is sick, because the widows and orphans are a blight on the empire. These widows and orphans make the empire look weak, and the empire has work to do to move the empire forward, gaining more power on the world agenda, and they cannot be distracted by the widows and orphans. Those who make the empire strong are the ones with wealth and power to drive the economy and innovation with their great ideas. The disciples believe this disciple believes the ones who should control the decision-making of the empire are the ones who contribute the most money to the empire, therefore making it stronger and more resilient empire. Now, the other disciple argues a different position. Their view of the empire's role is quite different. They feel they should be the lead disciple because they have the answers for how to run the empire, so it can be strong and respected and admired by others. They are not clear on how to build financial wealth for the empire because that is not the question they are asking. Instead, they are focused on how they can create an empire that reflects the diversity of the people who live there and pay taxes, and who built this empire and is focused on treating all the people with equity and dignity. This disciple is more focused on caring for the widows and orphans, creating a system to lift them up out of poverty, rather than blaming them for their situation. The disciple feels they are the greatest disciple and should rule the empire. Jesus catches up with the disciples when they arrive home, and he asks, "What were you guys discussing along the journey?" You see, in our gospel lesson today, Jesus had a problem. He was on his way to Jerusalem, where his life and ministry would end. Time was short, and he couldn't afford for his disciples to get caught up in silly narcissistic arguments. He needed them to see something very important before he was gone. He needed them to understand what his movement, the way of Jesus, what this was all about. So he says bluntly to the disciples, whoever wants to be first must be last of all and the servant of all. Excuse me. And then, like every great teacher does, he illustrated his point in a way that the disciples would never forget. He held up a child. To get the significance of this act, we need to know the status of children in the ancient world. The status of children in the world of the Bible was that they really didn't have a status. They were often treated as though they were invisible, sometimes, most often, a hardship. The problem of abandoned children was a chronic issue. Postnatal abandonment of infants was an accepted form of birth control. In order for these children to survive, they had to depend on the kindness of strangers. Sometimes this meant they became farmhands or servants at a very early age. Sometimes small children were even sex slaves because there was no one to protect them. And in some social circles, this was acceptable. The lucky children were adopted by a family. So Jesus tells his disciples, if they want to be great, they must be the servants of all. And if they want to know what that means, it means caring for children in a world that so often didn't. The disciples knew exactly what Jesus was doing. In the Roman culture of the day, if a man picked up a child, it was a declaration of adoption. In a world where 90% of the population lived in abject poverty, for a family to take in one of these abandoned children was an act of great generosity. And if you wonder whether or not Jesus' disciples got the importance of this message, it appears that they did. Historians note that the early Christians gained a reputation in the Roman Empire for taking in abandoned children. But what does any of this have to do with us? Well, like the disciples, it is essential that we understand the importance of being a servant to all. You remember that call to serve out of love and a generous spirit? Kind of like that old term we used to hear in the olden days, public servant. Someone who has been called to serve. Well, this is what Jesus was teaching. The disciples are called to serve. To serve. Not to rule over, not to have power over, not to control, but to be servants of all. In a world where diplomacy has been reduced to threats and name-calling, where religious violence dominates our daily news, does it not? We probably could say that for the last 50 years, maybe forever. I tried to think, when did wars and disagreements and attacking each other over our religions, when did that begin? And I'm like, it just has been there forever. It's like, I can't tell you when it began. It just seems like it's always been there. All the way back to Jesus. It's like it's always been there. We just kill each other because our religious differences. We have this consumerist mentality that has taken over our national soul. It is critical that the church points to a different way than creating division. And that way is the way of the man from Nazareth, who could care less about being the kind of Messiah the people wanted. He could care less about being the greatest or the most powerful or the most loved. He could care less about having the most likes or the most friends. His way is not the one of chest-pumping patriotism, nor the one who is most powerful. His way is not the one that says, take care of me, and then see what is left over for the rest of the world. His way is not the one that says the church is for those who look a certain way, or believe a certain way, or love a certain way, or identify the way that we decide that should happen. Jesus' way is simple but hard. Be servants of all, especially those who are invisible and forgotten. Especially those who are despised, especially those who are called abominations. Be the people who serve the widows and the orphans. Whether anyone notices or not, focus on those who live in the margins. Not the powerful, not the wealthy, not those with power, but those living in the margins. And that is why I believe the vision of the church has never been more important than today. Oh, well, maybe I could have said that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years, 50. Maybe I've always been able to say that. Maybe that's because the church has never really lived up to our vision. Maybe that's why we can always keep saying that. I'm not saying that the church is imperfect or that the church is perfect or anywhere near perfect. Oh, no. But it is to say that the vision of who Jesus called the church to be is the vision we must not lose sight of as the disciples of Jesus today, who follow in the way of Jesus, not in the way of the empire. In a world seriously divided by religion and class, material wealth and nationality, immigration status and land ownership, ability to afford education and not educated, the color of one's skin and the shape of one's body, marital status and gender, we have created divisions based on who someone loves or how they identify in this world. The number of tattoos or the car that they drive, whether they live on the west side or the east side of the state, conservative or progressive. We are a world of division. We make unconscious and conscious judgments about people and whether they are worthy or not based on our divisions and interpretations of our lovely binary thinking. We even make decisions based on white colonial rule of Robert's Rules of Order, which intentionally creates division. Who's right and who's wrong? Well, it is the majority who are right because the majority are white. Think about all the systems we have created within the world and within the church to create division. We so often are asking the wrong question. It is not who is the greatest, but who is willing to be a servant. The greatest question our church may possibly need to ask today is how will we as a congregation continue to live out Christ's calling to be servants of all? How are we serving the marginalized, the outcast, the widows, and the orphans of our day? How can we pay our bills so we can survive? How can the church gain wealth? Has always been the wrong question. It was then the wrong question, and it is today the wrong question. How can we be more like the empire has never been the purpose or the calling of the church. Have we forgotten? Greatness is not our purpose. Survival is not our purpose. Service is our purpose. How can we serve the poor and oppressed, the marginalized, those who do not have a place, those who do not know love? How can we be servants that transform the world of the empire? Not to become like the empire, but to transform the empire. That, my friends, is who the church was created to be. This transforming agent in the world that brings healing to the nations. How will we as the church continue to live our Christian calling to be servants of all? Menachem Schneerson, the famous Lubavitcher rabbi from Brooklyn years past, used to stand every week for hours as thousands of commuters would pass his way, filing by and receiving his blessing or advice out in Brooklyn. You got to picture Brooklyn bustling in the morning. He would give advice about matters great and matters small. Once someone asked him how he, who was then in his 80s, would stand for so long without seeming to get tired. And the rabbi replied, "When you're counting diamonds, you don't get tired." The world is filled with diamonds, covered by so many layers that most people, even religious people, can't see them. Those who are worried about who is the greatest can't see the diamonds. Those who need to posture and make infantile gestures can't see the diamonds. But those who are committed to seeing the diamonds among us, whether those diamonds are abandoned children, persons in the LGBTQIA+ community, or maybe even our own loved ones, they are fulfilling the call of Jesus to serve all. And the great secret, here's the secret. As I was reading about what brings joy to a person's life, it just doesn't magically appear. Joy is something we create in our lives, that we create. Joy in the church is something we create. It's not just magic, and it doesn't just, oh, we're joyful people. You have to create it. Joy, you create a place for joy in your life. And what's one of the most effective ways that people create joy in their lives? It is by serving others. And that is why the church is to be a place of joy. Because we are serving in our world, in our community. We're being transformative into people's lives. We're transforming the empire. And that, my friends, brings joy to the servants. It is in serving and living a life of serving. That's what brings joy into our lives. That's the great secret. That servanthood is a joyful way of living your life. The church is meant to be a place of joy because we are the place of servanthood. Amen. On that joyful note, let us stand as we join together to sing. And I'm looking on here to see what we're singing. And it printed on the back. Thank you. Hey, thank you. It is, I got it. I did have it. Oh, there it is. It is Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love. You've sung this before. It's number 498 in the big black hymnal. Let us stand as we sing with joy. You may be seated. Let us join our hearts and our minds in prayer. Holy love, we confess that too often we become fixated with our position in the world, maybe even our position in the church. We love the exercise of our own power and exert it over others, rather than for the benefit of the common good and your kingdom. Transform our hearts to crave you as the source of our power and love, the only good and fulfilling demonstration of it. Make us your instruments of peace, joy, and hope in the world and agents of new life. May we experience the reality that living as a generous spirit, seeking our wholeness in life, is where we find our source of joy. It is in showing kindness, compassion, seeking the common good in the kingdom, and caring for each other, serving one another, rather than trying to have power over each other. That's where we find joy. As we ponder why we do not feel joy in the world, may we ponder what it is I am doing to create joy in the world, rather than blaming others for siphoning my joy. Holy One, we seek to be servants. We seek to create this place of joy. But we know the realities of our world. We know the power of the empire, the systems that we have created and contributed in creating and empowering, that we have, in doing so, disempowered others. We have created a community of widows and orphans, those who are marginalized, who cannot afford housing because of our greed, making money off of housing. We have pushed the widows and orphans even further to the margins. We ask for your forgiveness for our greed and our lust for wealth and power. We ask for our forgiveness in creating systems that bring harm to others. Rather than serving, we have chosen to be part of the empire and got caught up. Help us. Help us to be the servants that you have called us to be as your disciples in 2024. Guide us. Bring wisdom. Bring strength. Bring your presence to always journey with us and weave into our times together. May we join together in the Lord's Prayer as printed in our bulletin this morning. O great Spirit, you are our shepherd chief in the most high place, whose home is everywhere, even beyond the stars and moon. Whatever you want done, let it also be done everywhere. Give us your gift of bread day by day. Forgive us our wrongs as we forgive those who wrong us. Take us away from wrongdoings. Free us from all evil, for everything belongs to you. Let your power and glory shine forever. Oh.
Home is calling PT Defiance free cleanup. It's 11 a.m.
As you leave today, there is an offering plate in the back. These are your gifts of generosity, of inspiration, of helping this community become who God has called us to be. Like the words of Psalm 54:66, we proclaim, with a free will offering I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, Holy One, for it is good. Let us give with the generosity of love made real that is available and free.
And now will you please join me in the prayer of thanksgiving and dedication. Gracious God, we give you thanks for all the gifts we receive from you and pray you receive our gifts for your kingdom. May they be a blessing and gift in our extended community and the world. Amen. And would you please stand as we sing together, Together We Serve.
Together we serve, united by love, inviting God's world to the glorious feast. We work and we pray through sorrow and joy, extending your love to the lost and the least. We seek to
May you go into the world renewed and refreshed, with humble and expectant peace, to witness to the love of God, the joy of the community of faith, and the hope of new life in Christ. Amen.